Hi, this is Rev Ed with today's Back Porch Devotional from Psalm 78. Give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings from of old, things that we have heard and know, that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might, and the wonders that he has done. He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers to teach to their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God, and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. And they should not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation whose heart was not steadfast, whose spirit was not faithful to God. They did not keep God's covenant, but refused to walk according to his law. They forgot his works and the wonders that he had shown them. He made streams come out of the rock and caused waters to flow down like rivers. Yet they sinned still more against him, rebelling against the Most High in the desert. They tested God in their heart by demanding the food that they craved. They spoke against God, saying, "Can God spread a table in the wilderness? Can he give bread or provide meat for his people?" Therefore, when the Lord heard, he was full of wrath. A fire was kindled against Jacob. His anger rose against Israel, because they did not believe in God and did not trust his saving power. Yet he commanded the skies above and opened the doors of heaven, and he rained down on them manna to eat and gave them the grain of heaven. Men ate the bread of angels, and he sent them food in abundance. In spite of all this, they sinned, and despite his wonders, they did not believe. But they flattered him with their mouths, and they lied to him with their tongues. Their heart was not steadfast toward him. They were not faithful to his covenant. Yet he, being compassionate, atoned for their iniquity and did not destroy them. He restrained his anger often and did not stir up his wrath. He remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passes and comes not again. How often they rebelled against him in the wilderness and grieved him in the desert. They tested God again and again and provoked the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power or the day when he redeemed them from the foe, when he performed his signs in Egypt. He led them in safety so that they were not afraid, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. And he brought them to his holy land, the mountain to which his right hand had won. He drove out nations before them. He appointed for them a possession and settled the tribes of Israel in their tents. Yet they tested and rebelled against the Most High God and did not keep his testimonies. They turned and acted treacherously like their fathers. They twisted like a deceitful bow. For they provoked him to anger with their high places. They moved him to jealousy with their idols. He rejected the tent of Joseph. He did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, but he chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loves. He built his sanctuary like the high heavens, like the earth which he has founded forever. He chose David, his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. From following the nursing ewes he brought him, to shepherd Jacob, his people, Israel, his inheritance. With an upright heart, he shepherded them and guided them with his skillful hand. There are actually 72 verses in Psalm 78, and I obviously didn't read all of them, but you get the sense of it. The psalmist wants to remind his people of everything that God has done for them and how patiently he's put up with them. And he begins this psalm by saying that the task of each generation is to pass this on to the next generation. You know, you may have heard the saying that God has no grandchildren. Everyone has to discover faith for themselves. You cannot inherit your parents' faith or your grandparents' faith. You must own it for yourself. And so the psalmist is striving to make sure that the next generation understands what not to do. And he points out the many times that the people of Israel rebelled against God, failed to trust in his goodness, and simply put him to the test over and over and over again. And yet it says, God, being compassionate, atoned for their iniquity and did not destroy them. He restrained his anger often and did not stir up all his wrath. The point here is we need to remember how gracious God is when we repeatedly sin. Now, we're going to sin all the days of our lives, but hopefully, as time goes on and the Spirit of God works in us to recreate us into the image of Christ, our desire for sin grows less, and our desire for God and for the love of God and the things of God grows greater and greater. And so there's a warning here that we would not be like the people of Israel. And there's also a caution that we should take, because the people of Israel rebelled against God over and over and over again, and yet he remained compassionate toward them. And so some might conclude that, well, God is gracious. We're under grace. We can do whatever we want. Paul addresses that in the 6th chapter of Romans, where he said, shall we keep on sinning so that grace might abound? And he says, by no means. Heck no. We are not to live that way. We are no longer under the law in terms of keeping score, trying to figure out how many points we get for doing right and how many minuses we get for doing wrong. We are under grace. But that grace ought to lead us into deeper and stronger holiness and godliness. Becoming holy and godly is one of the major things about belonging to Jesus Christ. We cannot continue to flounder in sinfulness and expect God to overlook it. There is judgment that comes, as this psalmist relates, as you can look back through the history of the people of Israel and see how many times, even though God was compassionate, he still let judgment fall on his people. And he concludes the psalm by pointing out that eventually God brought them a king who, as he says, shepherded them with an upright heart and guided them with a skillful hand. David was the model king for Israel. And we know that things went sideways for Israel shortly after David's reign. And yet David is the model. But what we have here also is a hint towards the coming son of David, who will be the ultimate king and the ultimate shepherd. Jesus himself addresses this in the 10th chapter of the Gospel of John. He says, the thief comes only to kill and steal and destroy. I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. The reference to David in this psalm points us to the Son of David, our Lord Jesus Christ, who is the good shepherd, who will bring that one flock in together. And we can trust that God's grace has been poured out on us because we have put our trust in Jesus. Let's not be rebellious like the people of Israel. Let's not put him to the test. Let us strive to enter into lives of holiness and godliness and humility and compassion, lives that are worthy of the sacrifice that our good shepherd Jesus has made for us. Trust that he will bring all of his sheep home and live for him. God's blessings be upon you this day.